Thank you, DMC. Appreciate that. I feel pretty good about upping my PB from like 240k to, what was it, 276? Nice. Oh, it's a good thing that bullet despawned, otherwise that would have been a death. Chocolate is out in force tonight. That's not a sentence I thought I would ever say. Huh. The new content for Diablo 4 doesn't do the Paladin class dirty. Don't even own Diablo. Oh, yeah. You know, I was so addicted to Diablo 2 for so long. And I bought Diablo 3. And I played it some, but I didn't really catch on with it. Yo, D-Tungsten, 67 months! Unreal. All I can say is thank you. It's much appreciated. But yeah, I just didn't... Diablo 3 didn't click with me for whatever reason, and so I kind of dropped it after a while. And could I go back and get into Diablo 2 Remastered? I could, but I would probably fall down the rabbit hole again, and I don't want to do that because I lost 10 years to that game. Had some good times, but man, after a while you kind of just... I don't know. Becomes a routine, not a fun activity. But yeah, I just saw the thing pop up in chat. Help me vote for what indie game I'm going to play on January 1st. For those unfamiliar, I always stream a new-to-me indie game on the 1st of January to see, can I beat it in one day, or if not, how far can I get? And then I usually play through it over the next couple of days after that. So, anyway, check that out. Now I need to stream at least 5 more years. Maybe. I mean, you know, I don't plan on giving up the podcast or stopping any of this anytime soon, so it's possible. Although in 5 more years, man, I'll be approaching my mid-50s. My personal opinion, the meaningless of the 6-7 meme is the meaning itself. Sort of like finding value in nonsense. Yeah, I think you're probably right. That's probably a fair assessment. Kind of like, the whole mod thing in the 60s. It was pretty nonsense. But people latched onto it for a hot minute, and we have a handful of popular songs that came from that era that remind us that it was a thing. Like My Generation by The Who. It's surprising there aren't more Shmup podcasts. You know, there used to be. There used to be. Because when Mark first started the Electric Underground, it was a podcast, and it was a Shmup podcast initially, almost entirely. And then he kind of branched out and started doing the YouTube thing. And that became the focus. But yeah, the initial audio podcast of the Electric Underground was almost entirely Shmup focused. There was also a short-lived audio podcast about shmups called the Bullet Hello Cast that I enjoyed. But the guy who did that one, he didn't keep it going for all that long. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he interviewed some high-scoring people and others. I mean, I was... Bullet Hello podcast you never heard of? Yeah, it wasn't around all that long. But it was a fun little podcast. I'm trying to remember. I was episode like 4 or 5 of the original Electric Underground podcast. Mark and I talked kind of shmup history, shmup collecting, and we got into a spirited discussion about Star Fox Zero, because we're both defenders of that game. It was a fun discussion. Still available out there on the internet.com if you want to find it. It's that was what, 2018, and he did that just a few months before I started my podcast. Like maybe like 2 months before I started my podcast, because my podcast was in the works at that point. You know, like we had the idea, we were getting ready to do it. We just hadn't ramped it all up yet. Yeah, I have watched some ASE podcast stuff. Yep. Those can be fun. Some of those discussions tend to get a little bit higher level than I'm at. So sometimes they get a bit esoteric in the mechanics and scoring, but I do try to check those out from time to time so I can broaden my knowledge base, although I am woefully behind in my general podcast backlog as it is. Of other podcasts I listen to. I thought about dropping a podcast or two along the way somewhere just so I could more easily catch back up and then, go back and jump back in, but it's okay to be behind. I'm sure not everybody listens to my podcast episodes, the week they come out. Has my audience changed numbers a lot across the years? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, some of the people that were listening to us initially probably dropped us years ago, and we've picked up other listeners along the way. And for sure our player community has, because when we started out, we were just on a forum, and we didn't really have Discord as a thing, or at least not a thing we were doing initially. And so it was a very different landscape in the summer of 2018 when we kind of got going than it is now, or even what it was, 3 or 4 years later. And I think we waited too long to start our own Discord server, honestly. We should have done that way before we did. But it was fine. Most shmup players move on after a few years. Yeah, I think you're right. Or they go back to being casually engaged in the genre rather than hardcore. And, some of that's a combination of busy adult life, changing interests in gaming, or, you know, some players never feel like they progress, and because they want to progress and feel like they don't or they can't, that they, you know, they just kind of give up on the genre in the more, I won't say hardcore sense, but serious play sense. Casually involved. Yeah, and that's totally fine. Which obviously is still appreciated because it means that, you know, at least we're getting engagement and eyes and ears, so to speak. I mean, yeah, anything we can do to keep people listening and joining the Discord, watching the streams, downloading the episodes, buying t-shirts, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know, it's all good stuff. It's all engagement. You know, we do this as a hobby, and so it's like, I'm not looking to get all kinds of fame and fortune doing a shoot 'em up podcast, but it is gratifying to know that people pay attention, that we're not just podcasting into the void, and that there are those out there who care about what we do. Should participate more in your Discord. Been pretty absent, focusing in life problems. Yeah, like I said, no big deal. You know, people come and go from active participation all the time, and that's just life. You know, I'm at a point where I can be on the Discord all the time because I don't have family obligations and things that I'm constantly engaged with. I'm old enough that I don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. Like your videos you've been making, just want to know that they help people. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing with my pickups videos, which I'm woefully behind on. I have a pickups video I recorded back in October that I still haven't posted. Just because I've been too lazy to edit it. You know, I don't do those for engagement anymore. I used to, but at this point, I just mostly do them to document what I'm buying and to show it off on some format, because if I've got video evidence that, hey, I own this thing, you know, it's not just me telling my insurance company, yeah, I have this stuff. No, I have proof that I own the collector's edition of, you know, Shoot 'em Up X, and that I got number 451 out of 1,000 or whatever. You know, and you know, I show it out all off on video, because then, if heaven forbid I was ever in a theft or fire situation or something like that, catastrophic loss, I could go back to the insurance company and say, no, I've got proof that I owned all of this stuff that I have cataloged in this database. It's not just that I clicked, I own it on the database. I actually have, you know, video evidence showing me unpacking this stuff and, you know, showing it off to the world. Not to mention, then, for most of those games that I own physically, when I stream them, I'm showing off the case, you know? I mean, like, well, it's sitting over here too far for me to reach, but, you know, my copy of, I'm only playing it for myself right now, but my copy of Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, you know, it's sitting on the love seat here adjacent to my couch. And, you know, when I was playing through the Tears of the Kingdom this last time, I was showing off that, yes, it's the Switch 2 version. Stuff like that, you know, I want to be able to show it all off and prove that it's mine. Yeah, I mean, you know, when you get enough stuff, when you own enough stuff that you reach that point, it is important to document it for insurance. Just like I started my Instagram years ago, a couple, 3 years ago, to document my music collection, and I was also using it to sort of try to show off, oh, this is what I'm listening to today, and show pictures of it. I kind of fell off with that, but you know, similar idea where like I want to document what I'm doing, but then also I want to show off this stuff that I've got, because if I own a CD that's a little bit more rare or an LP that's a little bit more rare, you know, I want to have some proof that I own it, not just a Discogs listing, but photo, video, something that shows it among my stuff, you know, because I got a handful of things like that, you know. I mean, at this point, I think even with the repress copies of the Streets of Rage 2 vinyl are not cheap. Or like my Thunder Force 4 vinyl, that only got one pressing through Data Discs. You know, there's a doom band out of the UK called My Silent Wake. They put out an album years ago called, what was it, Garland of Tears, I think. And I got in on the pre-order of the special edition LP release. And that was not cheap to pre-order. And it was a full multicolor LP package plus a bonus 7-inch that had a song that wouldn't fit on the record itself. You know, and I think that was like $50 to import with shipping. And I haven't looked at prices for it lately, but I'm sure it's gone up in value, because there were only something like 400 copies of that pressed or something along those lines. You know, if I ever did have a theft or fire situation, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't care what printing of a particular CD I had, or what, you know, what version of a classic rock record I might have on vinyl. You know, I don't care if it's the Terre Haute pressing or whatever other version might be out there. I just want a copy of it again. But for stuff like that, where it was, yeah, this was a limited edition pre-order that I spent money on and then waited months to get it in my hands, I want that version again, because I ordered it specifically that way. Whereas a lot of that other stuff, it's like, yeah, I just picked it up at a store when I found it. So I want to make sure that I actually get what I bought and paid for back in a meaningful capacity. which is why I document it. Not to mention, as much as I own now, it's also good to have stuff documented so that when you go to the store and you find something, you're like, ooh, that looks interesting. I can double check and make sure I didn't already buy this, did I? Especially for bands I really like, where I collect their albums on the regular. It's like, did I pick this up before? Or seems silly, but even if your collection's not that big, it can be easy to forget. Oh yeah, I already bought that. I mean, heck, I forget that I went to the store, 6 weeks ago and bought a container of Scotch tape, so I might buy another one. And then I've got 3 rolls of Scotch tape in the drawer or something like that, And that's a purchase that doesn't mean anything. For stuff that actually means something, I would rather make sure that I'm not doubling up unless I'm doing so intentionally, like, oh, I have the original standard edition of this CD. Now I want the remaster, or now I want the special edition, or whatever the case may be. Oh, here's the Japanese version with bonus tracks, or here's a reissue with live stuff tacked on at the end, or a DVD as a bonus. Those kinds of things. So, yeah, it's just really important for me to make sure that I keep track of stuff. It's a good thing that those don't home in on your position too much, because otherwise it would be difficult to escape. Yeah, the respawning can kind of be a little bit of a problem. Because boy, you get down to what you think is the last enemy, and then nope. Suddenly a whole bunch more appear on screen. right in the middle of a wave. Gonna get lucky with the stars and candy canes. There's my 300K. Nice. Well, that was my goal for tonight, so everything else is gravy. Just kind of having a rough night the last stream, so I was not convinced I was gonna do it tonight, but this is good. Well, just how far can I take this tonight? Excuse me. $350, okay. Well, I've shattered my goal already. Nice. $400K! Nice! 450, man. I was not expecting to see that score today. 500,000. Man. This must be the run of a lifetime. He says right before he dies. Yeah, it can start to go sideways pretty quickly. A pretty good RNG up to this point, though. 550. I've definitely managed to get some favorable RNG this run. No doubt. 600K. Well, I doubled my original goal. Holy cow. Been at this for quite a while. 650. Boom! That's it. Wow. Yo! Fagmanatic and Company, welcome in. How's it going, everybody? I need to get a better photo than that. There. Yeah, that's much clearer. That's a heck of a jump. I more than doubled my previous PB from earlier this evening. I nearly tripled. Well, no, I didn't nearly triple, but Night Striker Gear Pacifist stream got a PB. Oh, nice. Yes, the Santa gaming goes well, as you can see. 662,780 points on this last run. I had hoped to do 250 or 300k tonight, but yeah, I kind of blew past that, and that was pretty awesome.